Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily podcast, where every day I try to bring you insightful discussions from the experts that are helping to shape our digital world. And today I want to dive right into the heart of cybersecurity, examining the very lifeblood of every organisational infrastructure. And what I'm talking about here is Active Directory, or AD for the fellow IT guys and girls listening. And to explore this topic in more detail, I've got the perfect guest. His name's Simon Hodgkinson, and he is a strategic advisor at Semperis, which is a pioneer in identity security, which is specifically designed for Microsoft Active Directory. He's got wide range experience from .com to investment banking to commercial software companies. All have culminated in his expert understanding of Active Directory security. So today I want to explore why AD is essential to business operation and why it's exploited in 90% of cyber attacks. And we'll also touch on the complexities of securing hybrid identity environments and understand why organisations need AD-specific recovery solutions and identity threat detection and response tools. But enough from me. Buckle up and hold on tight as I beam your ears all the way to the UK, where you can join me and Simon in conversation. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Great. Thank you. Thanks, Neil. And thanks for the opportunity to chat. So, I'm Simon Hodgkinson. I have had a career spanning 37 years in IT. So I've seen everything from mainframes and punch cards through to the latest tech we're saying today with things like AI. Worked at a number of different companies. I've worked for big software companies like Sybase, that are now SAP, of course. I've worked in financial services with Lehman Brothers. I was even part of a .com in the year 2000, which unfortunately was unsuccessful. And I joined BP and spent the last 18 years of my corporate career at BP, with the last 4 years of that being Chief Information Security Officer.
Wow, you've been on an incredible journey from punch cards to mainframes. So I've got to ask about your origin story and your journey from being CISO at BP to becoming strategic advisor at Semperis. So, is there anything or a story behind that you can share with me today?
Well, yeah. So first and foremost, it kind of wasn't planned. I decided I'd done 4 years at BP, and I'd reached that point in my career where BP needed a fresh set of eyes as CISOs. 4 years in a role is long for anybody. So I was ready to retire, frankly. But I didn't really have any plans. And as you imagine, leaving a big corporation, there are quite a lot of covenants that stop you working for things. Anyway, long story short, I knew the CEO at NHS Digital, who asked me to go in and do some work for the NHS immediately after I left BP, when they were in the middle of COVID. And so I went and did some part-time work, 3 days a week, and I quite enjoyed it. And in an advisory role, not in an operation, not being operationally accountable. And during that period as well, I did quite a lot of networking. So I spoke to everybody I could think of through my career to see what might come after. And I was talking to one of the investors in Semperis, who introduced me to Mickey Bresman, the CEO of Semperis. And after several conversations, including everything from technology to company culture, we agreed I would become an advisor. And important to know, I think I was hugely impressed by the technology. The technology is fantastic, but actually it was the culture, the mission, and the tone that I found compelling about Semperis, and hence we decided to join forces.
What a great story. And one of the reasons I was excited to get you on the podcast today, especially because of your experience, is if we were to take a look under the hood of any IT department in any industry, you're going to find Active Directory, or AD, it's often referred to. And that ultimately it connects users with the network resources that they need to get their work done. But most people outside of IT take that stuff for granted. But for anyone inside of IT, can you tell me why CISO should be prioritizing securing Active Directory, and how does Semperis aid them in this process too?
Yeah, well, so that's a great point, Neil. And I think people, when you talk about Active Directory connecting everything, computers, users, etc., in within the network, it's like the address book that connects everything within your computer network. Yeah. We've got to remember, we're not here to do technology or security. We're actually here to enable the business to deliver on whatever their strategic outcomes are. And with the acceleration of digital through COVID, every business now in reality is a digital business. Most businesses can't survive a prolonged loss of technology. So if you think about Active Directory's role, if it's not there, you can't connect anybody to anything in your network, in your traditional on-premise environment, or indeed in your cloud SaaS or software as a service, platform as a service, infrastructure as a service. Nothing will connect your users to what they need to deliver their job. And then in fact, you're out of business. So you can't satisfy your customers' needs anymore. So in its simplest form, Active Directory is the most important IT service that any IT function runs, because without it, you can't deliver any of your business critical services. And where Semperis plays is it is a really focused on Active Directory security and recovery. So it's all about making your Active Directory operationally resilient. And we do that through a couple of things. We continuously monitor Active Directory for what I like to call configuration drift. So alerting on things like indicators of exposure and compromise as they happen. And, also having the capability to automatically remediate issues that you've configured it to do. But actually, what I was really, really excited about with the technology when Mickey and I started the conversation was about the recovery of Active Directory. And anybody who has developed cyber playbooks to recover from, situations like NotPetya, which hit MERS, will understand just how important it is to get Active Directory back with integrity in your environment. And it is incredibly complex to do. The process, as documented by Microsoft, is incredibly complex. And if you get any stage wrong, it's a bit like snakes and ladders. You're back to the beginning. So actually what Semperis does is automate all of that. It automates your ability to recover your Active Directory environment, and takes all of that complexity away. But it also does, with that recovery mechanism, it also allows you to take backups of your AD, restore it into isolated environments to test things. And if we talk a lot about security and how malicious actors might attack AD, but actually, because of its importance, you've got to protect yourself against configuration errors as well, human error, and that often happens through change in IT. So being able to, in an agile way, be able to test against your AD changes is really important.
And I read quite a scary stat before you came on the podcast today, and that is that AD is reportedly exploited in 9 out of 10 cyber attacks, which is just phenomenal. So can you talk about the reasons behind that, and also some of the common strategies that hackers ultimately use to exploit AD too?
Yeah, sure. So I can reinforce that statistic. I end up talking to a lot of incident response organizations, and they would confirm that 9 out of 10, in some would confirm it's 100%. Wow. At the heart of it is AD. And let's think about why that is. So, the initial goal of any cyber adversary is to gain unauthorized access to your systems. And how do they do that? their initial technique is just to secure that credential. So they'll use things like password spray attempts. That's where they use massive amounts of compute just to send attacks against numerous organizations, thousands of them all at the same time, in the hope they'll get some combination of user and password correct. So it's not targeted in any way. It's just if you get caught in that, then it's just unfortunate. You've also got attackers that will be more dedicated. So they will pick an organization for whatever purpose. It depends on their motivation, if it's financial gain or if it's intellectual property, or if they want to cause disruption to national infrastructure. They will be more sophisticated in their approach. And we talk a lot about phishing as being mass attacks, but they may use things like spear phishing, where they actually target individuals within organizations to social engineer them and gain their credentials. But interestingly enough, there's a building market now on the dark web where you can, if you're interested in attacking an organization, you can go to what's called access brokers, who will sell you credentials they've already compromised. So, these are known, I hate to use the term credible, but it is credible organizations in the dark web that have that access that they will sell to you. And depending on the nature of the organization, if it's a big organization where there's potentially huge financial gain through data exfiltration or ransomware, so extortion type attempts, they may pay a few £1,000s for that access. And it also depends on the level of access. So, of course, if somebody's got high privileges, that's going to cost more than if somebody's got low privileges. So there are numerous different ways they will find that initial access into an organization. And then once they get into the organization, what they tend to do is sit and wait and do a bit of reconnaissance. And then they'll try to elevate their privileges with the ultimate gain of getting administrative access to manage your Active Directory domain. And at that point, they literally have the keys to the kingdom. So in layman's terms, they have the master key. They can get and do anything, and therefore they could exfiltrate sensitive information. Equally, they can deploy malicious software across your network as well. And that's why Active Directory is at the heart of 9 out of 10 cyber attacks.
Wow. And to further muddy the waters, we've also got the increasing complexity of hybrid identity environments that combine on-premise AD and Azure AD too. So with that in mind, what are the unique challenges in securing these environments, and how does Semperis help in tackling some of these issues?
Yes. So first and foremost, things like when we talk about hybrid identity, it's a combination of on-premise Active Directory and cloud-based.
Yeah.
So let's use Azure Active Directory as an example. There are other solutions out there. So essentially, it allows organizations to extend their on-premise identity and access platform, so their Active Directory infrastructure, into the cloud. And it can provide tremendous security benefits. So, with something like Azure Active Directory, you're able to implement single sign-on, and therefore you're able to have a single credential that gives you access to all of your applications. You're able to apply things like multi-factor authentication to that identity seamlessly across your organization. So there are lots of other benefits like conditional access, etc., that you get through that. I won't go into that now. So there are some huge security benefits of going down this world of having a single identity platform, which is used to access whether on-prem or in the cloud. But of course, as digitization increases rapidly in our lives, so you can see it in your personal lives, the amount of apps that you have, the amount of connections that means in terms of credentials you have into different organizations. that means that you've got a bigger attack surface. And with something like Azure Active Directory, although you get all of the security benefits, it's another piece of technology that you've got to ensure is managed effectively. It's secured effectively itself. So you've got to secure the thing that's fundamentally securing your organization. But I talked about earlier, Neil, about this notion of misconfiguration through human error. And therefore, you've got to make sure you manage that effectively, and you don't leave any security holes or make any configuration mistakes in yet another component in your IT landscape. So it does increase complexity, but I would also argue strongly that it does provide security improvements for most organizations if it's managed well and secured appropriately.
And I keep hearing about the concept of configuration drift. Can you expand on exactly what that means, and also how that poses a threat to Active Directory security, and what measures organizations can take to prevent that too?
Yeah, sure. I recognise. Actually, what I should have said at the end of the last question, and it's appropriate to this as well, is Semperis applies the same technology in terms of monitoring, using their continuous monitoring solution, looking for configuration drift in hybrid identity platform as well. So it does the same in Azure Active Directory, as well as having the ability to recover from adverse effects in Azure Active Directory as well. But the configuration drift in its basic form is a system, actually the actual state of a system being different from what it should be. So what's its intended state? So something is happening there that's anomalous. And what happens when, as I said, when adversaries gain initial access into organization, they'll often do reconnaissance. They'll figure out how they laterally move through an organization and escalate their privileges, with the ultimate goal of having administrative access to AD. And as they do that, they will leave breadcrumbs. And this is where Semperis sees those different techniques that the attackers are using, which are anomalous. They shouldn't be happening, and therefore their configuration drift. And Semperis will alert on those, and can automatically remediate those situations as well if you've configured it to do that. And that's so important. And attackers obviously are incredibly stealthy. So, they tend to use techniques which are perhaps not obvious to traditional monitoring solutions. And Semperis is different in the fact that it acts like a domain controller. It sees every single change that happens in Active Directory in the same way as you would replicate those changes through your domain controllers within Active Directory, and therefore nothing goes unseen by Semperis, and that's when we're able to. That's our differentiator, that we're then able to see that configuration, that anomalous configuration drift happening in your environment.
And for any business leader listening outside of the IT or security space who may be thinking about going in and blowing their IT director's mind after listening to this conversation, can you elaborate on the role and importance of identity threat detection and response tools, or ITDR, and also the processes around that in securing organizations' identity infrastructure? Because it's so important, isn't it?
It's absolutely critical. It sounds perhaps a bit extreme, but if you don't have Active Directory, you don't have a business. Because everybody's digital now. Obviously you do get more hands-on businesses, but their back end will be run on technology, and depending on the scale of the organization, if they've got Active Directory and it's not available, then of course they can't do business. And that's why I think Gartner created the identity threat detection and response category, frankly, to describe those solutions that protect identity systems. And that, Gartner tends to create these categories when things are happening in the market, right? So, it was frankly, in a response to an increasing number of security incidents that are happening, and therefore within the identity space, and therefore it needed that categorization. What I really like about it is it's differentiating the fact that, it's a specialist thing. It's not your necessarily your standard security tooling that does a good job of protecting your identity. The standard security tooling by the big vendors that I won't mention their names, but all of the big vendors out there will do a basic job of looking for attacks in your environment. But actually, what you need is specialist tools like Semperis out there to make sure that you don't fall foul of losing the most critical IT service in your environment. And that's why execs, boards should be asking organizations, their CISOs and their CIOs, specifically, what are they doing around protecting that identity and access management platform.
And if we were to take a worst case scenario where a company's been the victim of a hack or attack, in the context of recovery strategies, do you think organizations often fall into the trap of prioritizing applications over AD? And can you further discuss some of the potential risks of that approach and suggest maybe a more efficient recovery strategy?
It's a brilliant question, Neil. And since I left BP, obviously at BP, I had a reasonably myopic view of the world, what we were doing there. Obviously, I did a lot of networking, but you didn't get into deep conversations with organizations. But since leaving BP, I've done a bunch of advisory work and consulting in different places. And the amount of there's something in security called the CIA triad, is confidentiality, integrity, and availability. And people categorize their applications around those three things in order to be able to prioritize the controls they need to put on those applications. The amount of organizations that don't include Active Directory in that analysis is amazing. And yet it is the most important IT service stroke application you have in your environment. And I think people just, in the same way as sometimes people think, well, the internet is omnipresent. People, see identity as just being like part of the core of your technology landscape, a bit like the electricity that drives it, and really don't focus on actually how secure and how resilient that environment is. Now, in terms of approaches, I mean, the classic quote, "No plan survives the first contact of the enemy," springs to mind. Yeah. But you have to have a plan. Many organizations don't, unfortunately, but you've got to have a recovery playbook from a catastrophic event, such as NotPetya. So you've got to know what the steps in the dance are to actually recover your core infrastructure and then recover your applications landscape. And in that recovery, once you've got your basic network connectivity there, the absolute most critical service you have to recover first is Active Directory. Because actually all of the applications that sit on top of Active, that use identity, rely on Active Directory. So it has to be the first thing you bring back. And as I said, it is incredibly complex to do that through the manual processes and using traditional backup and recovery technology, which often is compromised as well. If an attacker has got into the environment, they will often look to try and find those critical backups and delete them, or indeed encrypt them, so that you can't recover. So having an approach where you've got secure backups that are easy to recover through highly automated technology, such as Semperis's Active Directory Forest Recovery, means that you can go from days, and it does take days to recover AD in complex organizations. You can go from days to hours. Now, just put that in context. Can you imagine any big organization today that can be without any of their technology for days?
Yeah, there isn't one. Is that in any industry?
No. So hopefully that explains why you've got to have a plan, because you've got to recover everything. AD's got to be on the critical path of that, because it's the first thing you need to recover from your application environment. But actually, you can't wait for days to do that. You've got to have highly automated technology in place to recover it really, really quickly.
And as our conversation comes to a close, I've got to ask, what would your key message be to any CISO listening, especially when it comes to investing in expertise around AD security, and any specific steps they should be considering to ensure their AD and consequently their business is ultimately secure?
Yeah, it's probably saying the obvious. I mean, we're not here. CISOs, and I ran global infrastructure and operations for BP before I was Chief Information Security Officer. There's lots of great technology out there. There's lots of cool technology out there. We're not here to do technology. We're here to enable the business. And we've got to remember that. And therefore, enabling the business means providing operationally resilient technology. And AD is the most important IT service that you manage. It has to be very, very resilient in terms of its operations. And resilient to me means you've got to be able to withstand or recover quickly from adverse events. So, in terms of withstanding, you've got to have specialist tools like Semperis Directory Services Protector, looking for that configuration drift and blocking it, or automatically remediating things in your environment. That's an absolute mess. And your generic cybersecurity tools just don't do a good enough job of that. But, sadly, every organization will be breached at some point. It's inevitable. And therefore, it's about your ability to recover as well. So you've got to look at the problem from the whole notion of resilience, and that's withstand by making sure bad things don't happen, and doing the best job you possibly can. And on the other hand, just accepting bad things will happen, and therefore you have to have ability to recover from that adverse event quickly. And therefore, you definitely need to invest in tools in protecting your identity and access management solutions.
Talked about a lot of serious topics around cybersecurity, and I cannot thank you enough for taking the time to come on here and share your insights. But before I let you go, I'm going to ask you to leave one more gift for everyone listening, and that is, what is a book that means something to you that we can add to our Amazon wish list, or a song that we can add to our Spotify playlist? I don't mind what it is. All I'm going to ask is, what would you like to leave everyone listening with, and why?
Perfect. Well, I'll the two things then. I'm going to pick a book and a song.
Awesome.
And it's a business book, and it's a book called Black Box Thinking by Matthew Syed. As I said, I've spent 18 years in an oil and gas company, and safety is the number one priority in those environments. And Matthew does an amazing job of just describing how safety performance improved in the airline industry. And what I really like about the book, it's all about culture. It's all about that culture of creating a psychologically safe environment where people are encouraged and rewarded to report mistakes that have happened or near misses that have occurred. And I think it's so analogous to cybersecurity, this notion of cyber safety. You have to build a culture of transparency and psychological safety. So, if you get phished, guess what? These people are getting better and better and better at crafting these phishing links. Don't beat people up from it. Encourage them to report it so that other people can learn from their mistakes. And I think that's why I really like the black box thinking.
Awesome. I'll get that added to the Amazon wish list. And a song. What song are you going to leave us with?
Well, my all-time favorite is Stairway to Heaven by Led Zeppelin. And there's a classic. I mean, all of the lyrics are classic in there, but the ones that strike me is there's lyrics saying, "Yes, there are two paths you can go by, but in the long run, and there's still time to change the road you're on." So to me, that is important, because it shows that there's two ways you handle kind of adversity. And I've had, a bunch of things go wrong in my career, but it's the ability to just learn from those mistakes and actually choose a different route and again, be resilient to that. You could always make your life better. And I'm going to be really corny now. So I would suggest anybody who's considering their path that they're on with AD resilience perhaps looks to change that by working with Semperis. And that will ultimately improve your life and your recovery.
And it makes me wonder. See what I did there?
Brilliant. You know what I'm going to do now? I'm going to go for a walk and listen to that.
I love it. Well, I'll get that added straight to our Spotify playlist. And for anyone listening, just wanting to find out more information about Semperis, what's the best starting point for everything, and maybe explore some of the topics we talked about today?
Yeah, well, so we've got a great website out there. We also provide 2 amazing pieces of free software. So there's software called Purple Knight, which essentially does a assessment of your Active Directory. It's like a school report card. So if you want to see Semperis in action, download Purple Knight, run it, and be really concerned by the report, because everybody who runs it finds some horrific stuff in their Active Directory environment, bar none. Everybody's seen stuff they didn't know about. And that's free. So it's called Purple Knight. You can access it from Semperis's website. And they also do something called Forest Druid. It's probably Forest Druid is all about understanding the most critical assets in your Active Directory environment and ensuring that they are secured. So looking at those core things and making sure you've done the best possible job that you can to protect it. And they'll give you a real sense of just the quality of the software that Semperis uses. But go to the website, reach out. People can also reach out to me on LinkedIn, and I will connect you up with the right people with Semperis as well. And I will add one final thing. Semperis has, bar none, the most specialists in Active Directory in terms of people, bar any organization. So it's not just the technology you get, you're backed off by a superb set of people and frankly a wonderful culture in the company. So I couldn't speak more highly of them.
Fantastic. Well, I get those links added to the show notes so people can find you nice and easily. And I think if you look at any organization and review those business critical processes that are needed to be operational, AD lies at the heart of everything. It is the crown jewels of an organization. If AD isn't working, then for the vast majority of organizations, none of the technology that underpins it will be working either. So it's such an important message that you've delivered today. So thank you for sharing that. And also, even leaving us with a great book and a classic tune too. But thanks for joining me today.
Thanks, Neil. Superb.
So a big thank you to Simon for his expert insights into the importance of securing Active Directory. It's clear that robust AD security is not just an option, it's a necessity in the corporate world now and our digital age. And if we learn anything from today's conversation, it's that we must prioritise recovery and detection measures that specifically target AD, especially given its exploitation in most cyber attacks. And the consequences of neglecting that crucial element can be catastrophic, all of which I think makes today's discussion all the more important. So for everyone listening, I hope you've gained some valuable insights from this discussion. Remember, secure your Active Directory, consider how solutions can help, and let's continue to stay informed, keep organisations secure, and embrace this evolving tech landscape at the same time. But hey, we've only scratched the surface here of a huge topic. So please email me now, techblogwriter@outlook.com, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, just @NeilC.Hughes. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know what you're doing to secure your Active Directory in the workplace too. Other than that, I'll be back again tomorrow with another industry expert in our digital studio. But just a big thank you for listening today. And until next time, don't be a stranger.